At InDigital, we know that public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only i3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Rapid Deploy believes that every public safety agency, regardless of size, should have access to the data they need when it matters most. That's why, since 2016, our mission has been to reduce emergency response times and improve public safety. We are the industry's only integrated emergency response platform. Our web-based cloud platform includes analytics, mapping, dispatch, and mobile apps, purpose-built for 911 in the 21st century. Visit www.rapiddeploy.com to learn how we enable effective, efficient, data-driven emergency response.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy, and as always, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. We've got several episodes that are going to be coming up that I'm recording, and I've been a guest on a few other podcasts. One of them was Roll with the Punches, and I'm going to be on the U Project. So there's a lot of different things that are coming up, and I'm very excited. One of the goals that I had for 2021 was to be a guest on podcasts that are outside of the 911 space, so that I could share my story out there more and build a little more interest for everything that's going on in public safety and the job that 911 dispatchers and call takers do on a daily basis. The most vital piece of public safety. So it has been really good so far, and between the virtual events and just everything. Thank you all so very much. It has been awesome. It's been an amazing experience. As well as thank you to all the patrons. I wouldn't be able to do everything I do if it wasn't for all of you. So if you're looking for some bonus content, actually something new that I added as well is the live broadcasts have always just been broadcasts. They've been on YouTube or on Facebook or on Twitter. That's Open Mic Live as well as the Dispatchers Roundtable. Well, as an added bonus for those who are patrons, there's going to be an audio version of that as well. A lot of them were saying, they don't always get to check out those sessions when they're live, and they would like to hear them, to at least hear them. So that'll be something cool that's coming for patrons as well. So once again, thank you all very, very much. Now, I am excited for my guest today. I met her briefly and heard her speak at the Be the Difference conference, and it's just everything that she talked about. It was called Say This, Not That. And we're going to get into that here as well, to talk about that session, because there's a lot of good tips in there. And we'll be getting to that one here. But again, I'm excited and I'm pumped. And my guest today is Dawn, and she's a 911 lead dispatcher with Davis County out of Utah, as well as an instructor for the Denise Amber Lee Foundation. Hey.
Hi. Hey, thanks
how's
for
it going?
having me.
Yeah,
Good.
thank you for being on. This is going to be good. Now, you're at work at the moment, right?
Yeah. I know as soon as I'm done with this, I'm going back to the floor. So
well, it is awesome
yeah.
that you're able to take a break here for a little bit to come on and talk with me here about your story. And I believe when the Be the Difference conference was going on, you were at work as well, right?
Yeah. So I
It
know
was
it's how it goes at dispatch. It seems like
right.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So a couple things. First off, you did amazing during your session. As I was watching, I was chat. I had a private channel, a group channel open on Discord with my friend Leah, as well as Tanya and Nathan and Emily. And I was sending messages to Nathan. I was like, dude, she's at work right now. One, she's doing an amazing job with her talk, and she's straight up holding her phone so still throughout this whole thing. And I thought her arm has got to be killing her.
It was. Yeah, that's what was so funny. I'm like, I go to the gym every day. I'm like, how is this so hard? Like, holding this like little phone, but it was funny.
Yeah,
So,
either way, you did
yeah.
excellent. No one would have ever known that
Yeah.
your arm was just burning.
This time I have a nice setup of two binders holding it
Oh,
together. So it's
perfect.
better. Yeah.
Well, again, very
Government
well done.
budget. Yes.
Yeah.
How we
Well,
make it work.
and you know what? That's how it happens. So the
Yeah.
second thing I was gonna mention was that you kind of took me back a little bit to when I was in dispatch, trying to do a project where so when I was in dispatch, I was also going to college, and I had to do everything online. So I'd be taking phone calls as well as doing my homework sometimes at the same time. So in between calls, I would be doing my discussions or other projects that I was doing. And a lot of times when I was in school, those main projects had to do with dispatch, which was, sharing stories and all different types of things. So seeing you at work made me and doing everything you were doing made me
Yeah.
made me flash back to when I was there and doing things as well. And it was cracked me up, but you did beautifully. Well done.
Thank you.
So I want to learn more about you because again, just with everything that you were doing, um, you've been doing this for about 16 years, right? That's what we
Yeah.
had said there in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, yeah, I wanted to do this ever since I was younger, even just a little kid. So when I was little, yeah, just in elementary school, I actually went and interviewed a dispatch agency because the teachers had like a little assignment said, go, visit you know, where you wanted to work and write a little
Mhm.
paper. So I visited a dispatch center and here I am just like a little kid. And I'm like, yeah, I want to work here. And everyone in there was like, why? Yeah, don't. And at the time I was like, well, that's a weird thing to say because everybody
Yeah.
else was, more welcoming or like, oh, hey, like friends who had interviewed maybe like the fire department or other things. But I was like, well, that's interesting. But now that I work here, I totally get it why they would be like, no, don't go somewhere else. Because like while I mean, dispatching is a passion, but I mean, it definitely has its setbacks and things like that. But yeah, once I was 18, I applied to be a dispatcher and I've been doing it since. And it just, it was passion. Like I just wanted to do it. But there was other hooks for me too. Cause like when my mom used to be a dispatcher actually.
Mhm.
And I would visit her and I just loved that they had a soda machine. So that was like the start was just soda. I was like, I want to work somewhere where I can just get soda whenever I want it. And so honestly, that's what it was. But here I am, look, with my soda. There's a soda place right across the street, so it's
Oh
worked out.
man.
I'm living the dream.
I was
So
just gonna that's crazy. I was
yes,
just gonna say that. Like you're living the dream.
yeah, I did it.
So, okay, let's backtrack a little bit. So you so you first started out like that. So here's the crazy thing is that and I've been seeing this a lot and maybe you've seen it as well and others who are watching and listening to this on social media, a lot of people are saying, we need to do or change something with the profession where, you see all these posters with the police, man or woman or fireman or whichever, and it's a poster that kids look up to and they think, oh, I want to be I want to be a cop, or I want to be a firefighter, or EMT or something like that. Nobody ever says that they want to be dispatch when they grow up. They want to be a dispatcher, a call taker. However, here's the unicorn right here.
I know.
You you
I was
actually,
me, yeah.
yes.
When I was little, yeah. It is so funny. But yeah, I think, I mean, part of that obviously because I was exposed to it. So I mean, obviously more exposure just for everyone would be so great. And I think recognition, that's what plays into it too. Because for
Mm.
instance, in our local area, we delivered a baby. And it was which is done, but it was just cool. And the family wanted to thank them. So they're like, hey, could we meet with them? So sure enough, who do they get? The EMTs, the paramedics, the people there. Who did they forget? Dispatch. So, and it's not that dispatchers ask for recognition. Most of the time, we're like cats. We want food and left alone, right?
This
So
is true. Yeah.
and occasionally we just want a little like affirmation, but the most part, with dispatchers, that's not what we're looking for. But it sometimes is hard seeing everyone else get it. Then you're more aware, like, okay, now we're the redheaded stepchild, like, or just you're forgotten. And I think if there was more awareness, recognition, like that, and including dispatchers, then the public would see it, kids would see it. And I think, not the posters are a great idea, but I think just hey, let's do something for them. People would be like, oh, this is cool. I want to do something like that. I want to
Yeah.
make a difference. So
So then, okay, so how old were you again when you were first in there? I guess what I want to kind of focus on here a little bit too is, do you remember what it was like going in there and your mom being there, and stuff that you were hearing? Because I mean, obviously, it made an impact. If you thought it was cool enough that when
yeah.
you got this class assignment, you wanted to go and say, "Hey, I want to do this. Tell me some things."
Yeah, well, it's funny to say that. Yeah, like the being involved, like, I mean, hearing things like that, it didn't seem like it was like, oh, this is something scary. It seemed more
Mhm.
like it was like a math problem that needed to be solved, or like, hey, I'm gonna,
Oh,
connect these pieces and this, like a puzzle, not like you know, at a young age, it wasn't the connection of like these are real people with real lives. Just because, like, as a kid, you just kind of, don't connect that part.
right.
So but and
You
then as
wanted
I
the
go,
soda.
yeah, the soda, that was a huge part. And then and it was like the cool old school like glass bottle like vending machine, but
Oh man,
yeah,
yeah.
it was nice. So but now I mean like but there was some things that I clued into right away. There
Mhm.
was I saw how family oriented it was in the dispatch center, how connected they were. My mom had friends off the floor, that she would hang out with. And then there was Christmas, which made me sad because I don't think some of the stuff happens as like it did before. Well, I don't think, I know it doesn't happen the same, but we would have dispatch Christmas parties. Like I would go, like all of us kids that were kids of the dispatchers, we'd get together and they like brought in a Santa and, like just things like that. It just felt like you had the second family. And that part, I sensed that right away. And that was something that I wanted.
It's Yeah, I was gonna say it's interesting because um I kind of feel like that might have been the same way for my son. So he's 16, he's gonna be 17 actually next week. Oh my God. But I would bring him in sometimes. Well, my wife would bring him in rather, and or we would just stop by there. If we were in the area, we would
Yeah.
stop by
Yep.
and just say hello. And he would be running around and would hear traffic and stuff, and I'd say, "This is what this is. This is what this is." And I just remember like the look in his eyes, just eyes popping out, like, "This is cool." I'm like, it is cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
But seeing that as well, all of us there being there, just like you're saying, as a family and stuff, that I think that's one of the things that I miss the most about being in dispatch is that camaraderie. When
Yeah.
you're in there for all these hours together. You see them more than you see your family sometimes, and that's how they become your family, especially if you end up hanging out with them afterwards as well, on the weekend or whichever. It just continues to build, and that it just makes it that much more strong.
Yeah. No, it's for sure. It's that way.
So you end up doing this project where you're saying that you want to do this. years pass, and you were how old now when you actually ended up getting into it then? You were about 18?
Yeah, so I applied when I was 18,
Mhm.
and the background took so long that I was 19. I'm just kidding.
Oh.
It wasn't, no. Doesn't that feel like backgrounds take that long?
It
But yeah,
does, yes.
it does. But yeah, I applied when I was 18. So I graduated. I was a nerd, first of all. So I skipped a grade of school, and I graduated when I was 17. And I went down, I had a scholarship, and I did a year of scholarship away, like out. I moved away for that, and then I came back, and here I was. So now I was 18, did a year of college, and I was like, okay, I'm coming back. I'm like, I want to look into this, and I looked in, and I was like, oh yeah, I meet all the qualifications, and then sure enough, like applied, and just right after I turned 19, like I started, and I've been doing it since, and I'm like, I can't imagine doing anything else, but
So, what was that like for you then going into it? Because you had the exposure already. Your mom had done this, and you had done this project. It was something that you were stoked to do in the beginning, right off the bat. So now you're going to apply. I mean, what? How did that feel? I mean, you're what, second generation then, right?
yeah.
For
So,
dispatch.
well, it felt like, well, I mean, it was pretty cool because, like, obviously, so because where I lost my mom, I just
Mhm.
felt like it was a way I could connect with her, and it was a way like I felt like I could carry a piece of her, or like, and almost get to know her more. Like, there I didn't have the opportunity to get to know her just because she died when I was 9.
Mhm.
So this was a way I could know what she went through. I like that aspect. So it was kind of unique for me in that regard. But also, I just kind of felt empowered. I saw them do it. I just felt like, oh, this is something that I can do, and I just knew, like, went into it thinking like, oh, and I'll enjoy this as well. So I liked that there wasn't a lot of fear. Like I felt empowered. I felt encouraged, optimistic. So there was a lot of positive feelings going in.
That that is excellent right there. When I went into it, I didn't know what to think. Like, I didn't have any experience at all. I didn't have that exposure or anything. But after doing it for a while, it got into my blood, and it
Yeah.
was something. It was I loved it. It was all that I wanted to do. Um, so you end up getting hired. What is the training like? Like, what do you end up going into? Because you've been doing this for 16 years now,
Yeah.
and I guess also, how much has the technology changed from that
Oh,
time in the
so
beginning
much.
to now?
It's so bizarre. I mean, you have to think like, cell phones. So at this time when I'm like starting, cell phones was just coming out, and it was
Mhm.
something that some people were getting, some people didn't. And if you had it, you only had the snake game. The snake game that would eat the, that was the only
Yes.
game on your phone. But then now, like, look at everything that we're doing with our phones. I mean, we're doing this. So, I mean, you have text to 911, just being able to use the satellites to get people's locations off of cell phones. I mean, the whole location thing, that's when I started to now. So it's been interesting just because, landlines, people phasing out to cell phones. And I mean, there was a phase where I was working where the technology hadn't caught up in dispatch. So when people would call in cell phones, it was quite a struggle. And I worked in a rural area. So,
Mhm.
um, you had some serious BFE areas. So
Right.
like when people would call and they're like, I'm on the main road, and it's like, well, crap. Like, where is that? Like, and they're
Yeah.
like, I honest to goodness, I had one caller who told me, she's like, I'm right under the moon. Because I asked her, I was like, is there anything you can see? But like, it was just nothing. But she's like, the moon, I see the moon. I'm like, well, sorry, that's not gonna help us. And so there was a lot of trial and error, I think, in that phase. And so now where technology has caught up more, rapid SOS, like things like that, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's nice to have. And that's why I'm so passionate about training. I want people to have as many tools as possible in their
Mhm.
toolbox to be able to do their job, because there was a phase where I'm like, where it wasn't there, and it could be technology and other things, but there was a gap.
Yeah. That makes me think of being in dispatch, and we had a huge like game area, and people would go out there and hike, and then they would get lost. and they would call us and they would say, I don't know where I'm at. And so we're trying to do everything we can, and even to, call the cell phone companies, the carriers, and see if they can get a better location by pinging them.
Yeah.
And sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't. So then, you start thinking outside the box, and or trying your best to. And really it ends up coming down to, especially if it's getting a little darker, because I worked midnight shifts. So, we would have an officer or two who's in the area, and I'd say, flash your lights. So the,
Yep.
the lights would go on, and they would, be calling um, for them. And I would say, do you see the lights? Do you hear the siren? Do you hear them calling or anything? Yeah, I do. And so that's how we would
Yeah.
get
An
people, how
advanced
we would find them.
Marco Polo. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like, who knew that would come into play in your training later? Yeah, but we seriously, that's how we had to do it. It was the same thing. Like,
Mhm.
it's like, can you hear the sirens? Can you do this? Can you do that? Yeah, like, it just trial and error. Like, you have 1 million keys on your key ring, and you're like, is it this one? Is it this one? Is it
Yeah.
this one? And you're just going through all those things with your caller, just being like, how about now? So
Right.
I can relate. Yeah.
So you get in there now. You say you had this confidence and empowerment and everything going in. Do you remember what it was like that first day when you're walking in, and if you can kind of paint a picture of what you're looking at? So you walk in, and how many monitors are there? What is it that you're seeing? And you go in, and did you still have that same feeling actually being in there and getting
Yeah.
ready to train? And all right, here we are.
Well, I guess, like, for like, I'm petite in size already. So,
Hmm.
like, I'm like 5'1", 5'2", depending on what shoes I'm wearing. And then, and being so young, like, going in, like, I was worried about that, because I could
Hmm.
see that, there was a difference between, like, me and others on the floor. So, I mean, there was, like, hesitation, like, man, hope the new kids at school like me, kind
Yeah,
of thing.
right. I have to share my gummy bears.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, yeah, like, seeing all the monitors and stuff, it became more real. And I think there's always going to be a gulp factor, if you will,
Mhm.
when it's like, oh, here we are, we're going to do this. So, but yeah.
So, do you remember your first call or any of those earlier calls
Oh, yeah,
when you started taking them?
yeah, I remember, one, and I was in training, and I was like, I'm going to do so good on this, because I was so I was kind of more studious type person. So I did this call, and I was like, I asked all the questions, and I got all the answers. And then my trainer turned to me, and she's like, that took you 12 minutes. And I was like, what? Like, but I did good, I thought. And she's like, no. And so I was like, well, but I don't understand. So it was kind of funny, like, being like, hey, you need to get all this stuff, but you have to do it fast. And I was just so aware, like, oh man, like, so it was just interesting learning that it wasn't going to be organized, in the sense of, like, every call is going to be different. And that I couldn't just use this, like, book and be like, did I do it? Yep, I did it. Did I do it? Yep, I did it. That I was like, wow, I'm gonna need to learn a lot more than I thought. So I think that was a
Right.
realization for me, that, like, this isn't gonna be, a 3-month training process. This is gonna be, like, I'm gonna continue to learn off the floor. I think I went into it a little bit naive, thinking like, okay, I'll train and then I'll know how to do it. But, so obviously, you can't take 12 minutes per caller. So
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
'cause there is so much information to get, and just listening to you say all of that makes me, flash back to myself as well. And
Yeah.
it's so that 3 months that you were thinking that it was going to take. When I first started out in Florida, and that first night I was told to take a 911 call, and told, you're not going to be able to do, the only way you're going to learn to do this is by jumping right in and doing it. I did have like a 40-hour beginners class that I did with a bunch of other dispatchers and call takers from around the area. But it was like, just like you said, it was just continuing to learn as I'm in there. Now, when I ended up moving back home to Southwest Michigan, where I was working for a central dispatch in Allegan County, the county that I grew up in, that was different, because I had that exposure and that training already of 3.5 years worth of experience. my training was about that. It was about 3.5 months that I ended up having that training, but everything was just, it was just so fast. I remember actually going home and having all of my 10 codes all written out on sheets, and having my wife quiz me on them, and then trying to remember all the ORIs, and trying to remember all of these other incident codes, and memorize all of them, just memory, 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 memory. And I finally got it, but man, it was intense.
Yeah. It is studying all that stuff. I remember, like, because I was when I moved back, because I had moved away for college for a year, but I came back and I was still going to college when I started. So
Mhm.
like you, like I would do college, like I worked nights and then I would do college in between, like my classes and stuff in between. But then I had a gym class that I couldn't take online, so
Mhm.
that was required. So I would go there, but then I would just hit the treadmill and all the 10 codes, all the things that I need to study. I just was like, I need to get these down, just because there's so much to learn. I was like, whatever I can
Mhm.
learn outside, I was like, I wanted to do it just to get that better, start. So just memorizing stuff. Yeah.
It's something else. Those who are watching and listening, if you are just starting out and everything, memorization is good.
Yeah.
It's your
Yeah.
friend, because
Yeah.
there was a time where, like, when I was training, they had us memorize everything. A little bit later on, there was another person who ended up saying, I'm not sure that I really care if they memorize it. I just want them to know where to find it if they need to. And I remember being on the other end of that and kind of arguing a little bit and saying, but it might be better if they still, memorize. Yeah, it's good to know where to find it, but if they have it in their head already, that'll shave down some time from having to look it up. Because what if the system goes down and what it is that they're trying to look up, it's not there,
Yeah.
but it can be in their brain and it'll still help out.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's hard too, is like being a trainer myself. Like
Hmm.
I tell them like, hey, make sure you this. But as you learn it and those things that like things that you can pick up and you can become an expert in, now you're
Hmm.
more skilled and more confident. It just helps you, so makes you be better.
Yeah, exactly. Now, how many years were you dispatching and call taking before you ended up, doing training as well? Was there something that, maybe happened, or was it just that passion for public safety that you wanted to be able to help that next generation that was coming in too?
Just next one. Honestly, I like it was just my next phase. As soon as I felt like,
Hmm.
hey, I was confident in it, I actually did my first, I worked about, between 4 and 5 years at Logan, and I dispatched for all of Cache County. And so it was kind of nice. It was more rural area, college town, but for multiple agencies. And then my husband, he got a job and moved, and then I worked actually at a dispatch for a train. We did it did trains for, we weren't a primary PSAP, but we were secondary. So
Hmm.
that one was a little bit interesting. But we had crazy emergency calls there that people didn't realize. For instance, like we had this kid who he got separated from his parents while boarding the train,
Hmm.
but then he ran after the train. So he's just 5, but there was a train coming from the other direction. And so that one was unique in coordinating units like, okay, I need who can intercept this child, before I got 2 minutes before this train's gonna arrive. Who do I have, you know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
just a lot of math almost. And so I like that. And which the child lived, we were able to intercept him. So that was cool. It was really quick.
Oof.
Yeah, that one,
That's
but yeah, so I mean, you'd have stuff like that, and then but we actually got consolidated, so we got laid off. So
oh
that
man.
was, yeah, and that was hard for me because I had just had a baby. I had my first, but then I applied for another agency, and this one was with Layton, just in the same like closest area. So I got a job there, and then once I was there, I was like, okay, I want to do this and I want to teach. And so any opportunity there was to teach, I put in for it. And then there is where I worked there over a decade. So I stayed there for over a decade. And I actually just came over here to Davis County just in October. So, but same thing, just for like, just any, looking for that platform where I can engage more, have that leash to be able to help people more is important to me. But um, so I teach at Post, which is like our class that that's required in Utah. If you want to be a
Hmm.
dispatcher in Utah, you have to complete that 40-hour course. And I teach one of the days for that course. And then I taught at my agency, and then I'm actually the Utah APCO vice president right now, which is over training. We that most people know what APCO is. There's APCO and NINA that are pretty active in the 911 areas. APCO's more popular in the western area, so
Hmm.
but it's just nice. Like I never want someone to be put in a job and be like, I hope a 911 call doesn't come in. I hope a 911 call doesn't come in. I used to play sports in high school, so you want to empower everyone to feel like I want to be the person that takes that last minute shot, not be like I hope I don't have to, you know, I want. So with dispatchers, that same concept of being like, I want to be put in the game. I want to take that call. I want to help someone. I wanted people to feel confident and excited to be there and empowered. All those things. I didn't want them to be like, oh crap, or nervous or hesitant or being like, please don't phone ring. Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
I
it
just
does.
wanted.
Yeah, it's like put me in, coach. Like I'm
Yes,
ready to
that
play.
concept, yeah. And I wanted to inspire other people to have to either, have because and everyone's different. Sometimes people
Hmm.
needed confidence, sometimes people needed training. Whatever it was they needed, I wanted to be that person to help be their friend and help fill that void. And so many agencies, they're like, well, we don't have a budget, we don't have this, we don't have that. And it's like, okay, well, how can I help? So can I help teach for free? Can I do this? Can I do that? Whatever it is, like we're all in this together. So that
You're
kind of
right.
thing.
Yeah, it's and I understand you completely because I remember I would see there was one point in my center where we were so short staffed that all of us turned into trainers. We had I think 3 CTOs, um, certified training officers, for those in the general public who watch and listen to this as well. But I wasn't a CTO, but we needed we all needed to be trainers to train that to try to train them as fast as possible,
Yeah.
but also still taking our time in a sense to have them do all these different types of things. But we would hear that sometimes where people would say, oh man, I hope this isn't a medical. Oh man, I hope this
Yes.
isn't this or that, or I hope
Yeah.
this isn't this. And you're thinking, damn, like I don't want them to feel like this, because it does suck in the beginning because you are dealing with new stuff all the time. Whenever you
Yep.
answer the phone, it's not going to be the same thing. It might be the same incident type, but it's not the same situation. And something crazy might just happen, but that's 911. But like you were saying, you don't want them to have that nervousness, and you want them to have that confidence so that when they pick up the phone, because my old phone system, if you picked up if you hit the button rather, which is basically the speakerphone, if you hit the button before picking up the handset, you would hear what was going on. And sometimes you would hit the button and all you hear is screaming. And
Yeah.
then everyone would be like, "Uh-oh." And then, you pick up the phone, and you start doing the call. And then what do you hear? Hard, fast typing. And the shit is going down. And you would see that in the trainees sometimes where they would hear it. They would be watching you and you'd hit that, and it just happened to be one of those where, people are screaming and it's a domestic or something. And you could see it in their face, like this is what we deal with. This is what we do. Yeah, this is what we do, but we want to train you and help you build that confidence.
Yep. Yeah. Well, because that, like when you said that, it's like when they're like, "Oh no, I hope it's not this." Yeah. Not just for them, but like for the patient, for the other people. Like I just, you
Right.
know, sometimes like what we said earlier, that dispatch gets left out. I see officers get sent to like these like really nice trainings out of state or things like that, and dispatchers, I know that they're like, "Oh, that just doesn't happen for us," and I'm like, "Oh, So I'm just trying to change that, and also like if there's extra projects that we need to do, let's do it. Like if there's something that we can do to make things better for us, for other people, you know what can we do to get it done?
Exactly. What is your favorite part about training?
Well, for those that know me, this is embarrassing, but they'll be like, I love to talk, and I talk a lot. And so when I'm training, I have like this captive audience.
Hmm.
So like they're trapped. So, but no, it's like someone to connect to. I'm that person. I'm not. I when I talk with in my personal life, just tell in personal stories. I talk in story. Like if I'm teaching, and so that's why teaching it seems so seamless with me, just because I teach that, I talk that way normally. So teaching it's not that much of it doesn't seem like it's a jump for me. It
Mhm.
just is a continuation. It's just a flow. And then when I can see someone like achieve it, or I see someone do great, like people that I've trained, I'm like, hey, like we did this, we achieved this. So that's pretty cool.
That is awesome. Um, so what shift you're working right now? So do you always work day shift then?
No, I'm working overtime.
Oh no.
So just,
Okay.
yeah, help. I know, overtime. I'm helping out covering shifts. But normally I work evenings.
Mhm.
So I'll work like 4 p.m. till 2 a.m. So, but today I'll work till 10 p.m. like after this. So my
So
Mountain Standard Time.
so here's an odd question then. What's
Okay.
your what's your favorite part of dispatching? Like what's your favorite position to work? Is it being on the radios or is it actually answering the phones? Which one would you
Oh, well, that one's I can tell you my least favorite.
Okay.
Well, so I mean, I love working swings. Swings is my favorite shift just because I
Mhm.
mean, I like sometimes when I work days, I feel like we get more routine calls and where it's like, "Hi, I missed this detective's call," or like, you
Right,
know,
yeah, a lot of admin calls, yeah.
yeah, yeah, just like, "Oh, hey, over the weekend, this was stolen. I need to report it," that type stuff. And so anyways, so I like that swings it's different and I feel like it's more like real stuff. Like not that the other stuff isn't real, but
Mhm.
just the stuff that you do this for, that you get in for. And then so what happened with the shifts is what positions we work is we have a service channel, and
Mhm.
that's more like where you run plates and get tows and people, and yeah, that one's less fun for me. I mean, like it needs done, but like it's
Right.
not like I feel like you're less in control. I mean, like not control, like um, I guess that would be a better word for it, but just I like doing the puzzle part of it. I like putting stuff together, and there's no puzzle with running somebody. You just run them and be like, "Here's the information," if that
Right.
makes sense. Or like, "Here, I got your toe. I did it." You know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So
There's
yeah,
that for us in Michigan, when I was over there, that position was called lean, and that's where we ran all of our NCIC stuff, license
yeah,
plates,
yep,
warrants, all of that. The other thing, however, was that we were also backup phones and backup radios. So if things went to hell on radios and they had a chase, they would send all of that traffic to a secondary channel, which if I was sitting there, I would have to run that channel as well as answering phones too.
yeah,
But and then the main radios would have the other channel that they're holding down because of the chases. Um, the only time, actually, no, I was gonna say the only time that one was fun, it wasn't.
yeah,
I'm the same as you because there would be some times you would come in and it would be actually so busy during the day that all of those warrants or whichever that was there, they would still be there when you got there at night. So you're all right. I got to put all these in
yep,
because it's left for you to do it, and it's got to get done. So you got to do it. But for me, yeah, phones or radios, those were my two most favorite to be on, unless it was a drunk driving grant and they were just running a lot of people and the possibility that they might actually have someone with a warrant, or it was one of those big alerts and oh man, we actually have this person or this car is stolen, part of that puzzle like you're talking, then it was actually kind of cool. Or if it was a weekend where officers showed up at a house where there was loud music and it turned out to be an underage party that was going on, and I got to be the one to call the parents to say, "Hey, you need to pick
hey,
up your kid."
yeah,
that that actually made it kind of fun because
yeah,
I I remember one time calling and one of I don't remember if it was the mom or the dad, but I remember hearing the parent in the background saying, "What did they do? What
oh
son of a," and they were
no,
just so, and then I got off the phone. I was like, "I'm sorry." They're
you're
like, "It's
like,
not
oh
your
no,
fault, man. Like you're not my kid. You didn't do this to them or whichever." And so then, they'd have to go and pick them up and I would get the officer on the secondary channel and say, parents have been notified. They're, just so you know, a little upset. And,
Yeah.
they would kind of chuckle and say, well, all right, we'll see what happens when they get here.
I know. Well, and that part, I mean, like, it is funny, like, how we take small joy and, like, the stuff like that. But in dispatch,
Right.
when you can laugh, you should laugh, because sometimes you
Exactly.
can't. Hmm.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Any moment, as with my open mic sessions, I'm a firm believer that laughing is good medicine. And sometimes in the job, you have to find humor in some of that, because it's just like when you have a kid that's playing on a phone that doesn't have service, but they can call 911 and you actually find them. You get that, like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons, like, excellent, like,
yes,
found out
it's
where they're
totally
at.
true. It is. It's true.
and and then you're able to get them out there, because the other thing too is, it's not just, satisfaction in that. It's, what if what it is that they're saying is actually true? What
Yeah.
if these kids that are playing on the phone and saying all this crazy stuff, what if it sounds like they're playing but they're not really playing? We're treating these calls as emergencies until we find out otherwise.
Yeah.
So there's those types of calls too. But then, you get people who call in that talk about, I don't know, just their 1096. They've got different issues that are going on. But what if that is actually going on, and then, you get them out there and, you save a life.
Yeah. No, for sure.
It's a crazy job.
It is. Well, I know, but it really is rewarding. I mean,
Hmm.
so like working phones and radio, like we had two incidents recently. One when I was working on radio, one when I was on phones, where we had a suicidal individual. So we had one where he was trying to, so our big interstate in Utah, so on I-15, the one that runs through the whole state,
Hmm.
we had someone who was trying to jump in front of a car. I mean, so it's 75-mile-per-hour zone, so it's pretty fast.
Hmm.
I mean, and you like just coordinating, like just trying to coordinate all the responses, like, hey, we need to shut off this off ramp. We need to get a unit here, here, here. And being a smaller agency, because we're not big, like we have to utilize other resources. And so coordinating like multi agencies, saying like, okay, teamwork, like this is what we're doing. Like it was nice to be able to like do something like that, to feel like, hey, we were able to help this person, and then the same with the phones. Like here we had this wife, she was super frantic. She was trying to reach her husband. He was at his work, but he was Snapchatting him with a noose, so he was just telling her goodbye, this and this. And then, that thing just being like, okay, well, now I need to get his location. And anytime you're trying to find a secondary location, because I mean, he didn't call 911, so I can't use those like same resources that I normally do. And T-Mobile, and we're like same thing. We have some pretty rural areas, so when we pinged his phone, they were like, "Here's a 3,000-meter accuracy ping." I'm like, "Thanks." So, but
Yeah.
anyways, being able to be like, okay, what else do I have? What else do I have? And feeling like, okay, we can still do this. We were able to save him, but it was really rewarding. I mean, even though like, and that one was hard because it was probably an hour-long ordeal.
Hmm.
And at one point, I was on the phone with the wife, but he called her, and this was his final goodbye. Because at this point, so now he has the noose and he's on the bridge, out in like a rural area, and but I was like, well, can he hear me? And she's like, yeah, he can. So then like my call changed, and now because she had already called 911, but she accepted him too. So now we're a three-way call.
Right.
And I was just talking to him, and I said, hey, life is so hard. Instead of thinking about all of it, just for right now, just focus on 5 minutes. Can you wait just 5 minutes? And that bought me enough time to get help to where he was. But yeah, he had already like, but as far as especially how close he was, where he was already with a noose and everything. So, but being able to achieve those, I feel like you get that greater reward. That's why I get no, like it's fun to work those channels. In the sense, being on police or being on phones to have those moments where you can change someone's life. But it also comes with a cost, because sometimes you'll take those calls that are heavy. And even though this one was a win, it was hard. Like I couldn't have a break. It was so draining. I drank all my soda and no time to go get another one. Like all the
Yeah.
caffeine, and that. And so it would have been nice to have that. So, but overall, like, obviously I would still pick this job. You know, if it came around again to like change things, I would still do it all over again.
It's I'm listening to you as you're telling that story, and it makes me think that, and I'm sure you've dealt with this as well, being on the other side. If it's one of your partners who's taking one of those calls, everyone in the room, other than whatever radio traffic is going on, are it's it's all of you just working like a well-oiled machine, right? You're
Yeah,
all working together to do this, but also at the same time, you're at the edge of your seat because it's you who is taking this call. You're right in the thick of it. And everyone else is working as fast as they can to assist you as well in different things. And you're probably also not only typing in the narrative of what the person is saying, who is out there, or your main caller, because you're on a three-way, you're typing in all this other stuff, but you're also probably at the same time looking at different maps or putting in GPS,
yeah,
or whichever, trying to figure out this puzzle to save this person's life. And I'm at the edge of my seat. You can't see it, but I'm at the edge just listening to you. And I think my watch even popped up and said, "You need to breathe," because
yeah.
I wasn't breathing while I was listening to you. But it gets like that, right? When
It
you're
does.
in
Yeah.
there and you're
Well,
all working
especially
together.
Yeah, especially with this area, because I was like, how many bridges? I mean, this isn't something that you memorize, because this is a rural
Mhm.
area. So these aren't bridges that cars cross. This isn't a normal bridge. This is like bridges in like farmland and like water
Mhm.
irrigation and like, it was up Weber Canyon area. So it was on the border between our agency and another agency. So up this mountainside, up the canyon, and Utah has beautiful mountains, and so it's like, okay, what kind of bridges are there even, so it's unique. So I'm going through and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm working with, and so I'm trying to capture. So in that moment while I'm talking to him, I was capturing pictures off of Google Maps. Look, this is the bridge, this is what it's going to be, this is your access point, and different things, and I'm hoping, like, oh man, I don't know how much off-roading they can go, or I'm not there, I don't know how far their cars are going to be able to reach, and so there was a lot of that dynamic going on. And while you're doing that, I'm out of the game, right? So all the other calls, that means all my other, like, my coworkers, they're shouldering now my workload, because I'm stuck on, not stuck, but like I'm busy with this critical incident, so I can't help with anything else.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. You 911 doesn't stop.
yeah,
That's something I always tell people, no matter what incident that is going on, big or small, 911 doesn't stop. Life doesn't stop.
yep,
It continues going and going and going, and you don't get a break. Just like you said, you didn't get a break from that time from the next one. And sometimes we do get a break. In this case, there wasn't. Um, how many people do you have working at a time?
so we'll, if we try not to do this, but sometimes if we're so short, like if someone calls in sick and stuff, we can work
Mhm.
down to even just two. It'll just be two of us. But best case scenario is that we'll have at least 4 to 5.
Man. So yeah, so it's kind of about the same size then as my the last center that I was at. Our minimum was three. And depend if it was like on a midnight shift, like probably from like 3 to 5 when someone would come in, just those last 2 hours, we could go down to two,
Yeah,
if we needed to.
I
But
know when
the minimum
someone,
was always three.
yeah, like we had someone who, and they started ralphing in the toilet, and they're like, "I'm fine." I'm like, no, like you can, I will answer all of the calls. Go."
Yeah.
Like, if, because that's the thing, I'm a sympathy vomiter. That's hard for me.
Mhm.
Like, when people throw up on the phone and you're like, you're their vomiting coach, and you're like, you're doing great. Like, I hate
Right.
that part. I'm not a fan.
I
So
can
this
uh,
the sounds, ugh.
right. I
So
can just I'm sorry. I can just see
yeah,
you being on the line and you're coaching someone, but at the same time, you're like dry heaving, like
yes,
not making a sound, but maybe just making, the face.
yeah. Well, because like even though I'm not there, I'm like I'm smelling it. Like I can smell it somehow, even though it's over the
Yeah.
phone.
And
Yeah,
that's one of the things that, I've told people before. When I've gone, even now, I've been out of dispatch. This July will be 8 years since I've been out of dispatch. And even now, when I go get my haircut and stuff, they'll ask what I do. And sometimes I'm not sure what to say, what I do. I guess I'm a podcaster. I've got this media company thing that I'm trying to build.
Yeah.
I'm a startup or whatever, but I always go back to what it was that started all of this, and that's
Let me hear it.
dispatch. Yeah, and they'll ask me, and I've told them, what's the craziest thing you've heard? I'm like, well, I've been on a phone call while someone decided to go pee, and I can't do anything. I'm just sitting there, and they don't. And
Yeah.
sometimes people don't tell you, right? They're like,
Mhm.
can you hold on just a minute? And you hear them set the phone down, and then you just hear them go, and you're like, okay, we're
Yeah.
doing this. Like, all right.
We're doing this. Yep. So it's so true. It's so true.
Yeah, and there's
So,
nothing you can do but take it.
no. Yep. I know the sounds that we've heard, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Now, so you've been doing this for 16 years now, and
Mhm.
you obviously have a passion for this. You love this job. You're a trainer as well. Is all of this and this experience that you've had one of the reasons why you also wanted to be an instructor with the Denise Amber Lee Foundation?
Yeah, well, just because like with my with my personal life, that's a
Mhm.
huge drive for me, just because some of the adversities, and that I've had to overcome. That's been a huge role that plays into it. But just I always just anytime we can empower people more, I just saw that there's such a need. I how many tapes have we heard over and over and over where we hear someone who's they're so disconnected from this person? It's like these are real people.
Mhm.
I know we go from call to call to call to call, and we take, we totaled up one of our dispatchers how many calls she took in just 1 year, and it was 5,000, like 200 and something calls. And I'm like, sheesh, I think we forget. Yeah, that's just in a center my size. That's one person taking that many calls. And I think it's hard to be compassionate for each and every one of those, but we have to be. And so
Right.
that's why when, this class, this that I taught for the Denise Amber Lee Foundation, that was say this, not that. It is one of it's like it holds a special place in my heart just because of the importance of it. Validating people's feelings, letting them know that we're here. Sometimes you'll have a dispatcher or a tape that you'll hear and it wasn't bad, but it wasn't, there, but it was obvious that, you just didn't feel that comfort, and when people call, hopefully that's the only time they have to call. Hopefully, and I just don't think that that's always being conveyed. So I hope
Mhm.
that, and maybe sometimes people don't know how to do it. So, that's why
It
I
was
was like, this class, it's important.
it was definitely a good class because and I said it earlier, and I've said this before in other episodes as well. When people are calling in, that might be their first time that they're
Yeah.
calling in, and depending on how you react, of course we treat every one of them like an emergency, even if it sounds off the wall. This is their emergency. This is their version of an emergency, and you treat it as such. But if it's that first time, if it happens to be the first time that they're calling in, and you're however you convey what you want to convey, and the way you put it, your tone or whichever, those people, that person might not ever call again. They might, and especially if it's like a domestic situation or something, they might not feel comfortable calling in after that. They've had enough, at home that they're going through or whichever. And then if someone is rude with them on the phone where they're supposed to be getting help, they might not ever call again. So, exactly, that's the same thing as, as you're talking and stuff, and how to respond to certain people. With this class, though, I guess, what was more of some inspiration than putting that out? Was it just that, or was there more to it?
So with my personal life, so I guess we'll do just like a little mini dive into that.
Hmm.
So I grew up in a domestic violence field home. So my dad, he actually used to be a police officer,
Hmm.
and my mom was a dispatcher. That's how they met. But domestic violence, it doesn't know boundaries like that. Like um, it doesn't stop. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter how, it doesn't matter, stuff like that. So anyways, it was something, growing up with. And then till one night, like frog in boiling water, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse until my father ended up killing my mom and my sister. So yeah, after
Wow.
that, I ended up moving. and I got placed with the state custody. And once I was with state custody, my dad, he didn't lose his parental rights, but he did sign, put my uncle in charge of raising us, or which was his brother.
Mhm.
And so, they were raising us, but it just, they were great aunt and uncles, in that regard, like in a sense of like, but they didn't, they weren't, it was, for whatever reason, they would tell us like, hey, hey, we can't love you because we didn't, you're not our own. We can't love you like that. And for me, it was like, what, like I didn't understand. I'm like, I needed a parent. I needed this. And so
Mhm.
there was a huge barrier. Like in here I was just 9. It wasn't like I did anything wrong. Like, and I needed love, and I needed, um, that. And anyways, and so here it was broken. It was different things. And so I ended up, eventually, so I actually ran away when I was 17. So when I was 17, I ran away. And there was other things involved with that, but just not enough time to go into everything. Um,
Right.
but it was, there was a lot of, there was other things going on that like, but here I am, I ran away, but I was determined not to be a statistic. I wanted to be better, than that. I was going to rise above things, and I still got good grades. I got my scholarship, but 3 days after I graduated high school, I got hit by a car. I was biking to and from work, and I got hit by a car, and I was young, so I couldn't afford car insurance. Anyways, I got life flighted, I got brain surgery, and I'm like overwhelmed with all these bills, and they're telling me my health insurance isn't going to cover it, and all these things. And just, I just felt very alone, not having that parent come in and swoop in and be like, let me take care of this, and be that like advocate for me. And I just felt all the world's pressure. And here I was still only 17, and I was like, you know, I just felt like that life wasn't, it didn't matter how hard I was going to work in life, that it wasn't going to work out. And so, anyways, once I was discharged, they gave me a giant bottle of Oxycontin. I took the whole bottle to my mom's grave, and I was just determined, like, I'm just going to be done. Like, it didn't matter how hard I tried, that my destiny wasn't to be anything better. And so, anyways, but I got a phone call, luckily, from a friend, like a coworker who didn't even have my number. And they were like, hey, I just felt really impressioned to give you a call. And that was all I needed. That was my hook. That was what I needed. And so, knowing that, I know that sometimes when, as dispatchers, we get so not tired, but like desensitized when we get calls, especially from youth who are like, I'm going to kill myself. And people be like, ugh, then just do it. Like I've heard dispatchers, or they'll say like, oh, well, like, they're like, oh my gosh, what is it? Teen angst or this or that, or like, or they'll kind of make fun of people. But if people knew my whole story, I don't think that anybody would have judged me, just based on everything. I lost my parents, I lost my home, I was forced to move. And I didn't grow up, like I didn't get just this Cinderella story after.
Mhm.
And it was Harry Potter. I guess that's the best better way to describe it. And and it was hard, and we never know anyone's full story. And because we don't know someone's full story, we need to have that compassion. And even though we only touch their lives for 2 minutes, it can be more impactful than we can ever realize. All it took for me was a phone call, and that's why I'm still here today. And if that was just a phone call, imagine what kind of phone call we can have affecting. The ripple effect, the way that you can measure things, it would. It's limitless, honestly, like the amount of
Right.
change that we can do. So that's, it just became a passion for me, something that I want to push, and just help other people see the other side. And it'll give dispatchers fire, like, oh yeah, I am doing good, when even though I'm helping this and this and this, it's not just teen angst, I guess, if that makes sense.
Damn. That was so I usually have I usually have like a closing question as a wrap up, and I don't think there's anything that I can say that will that was perfect. That just your story alone, and the fact that, so in the beginning, you had said that, um how did you put it? That you were kind of a nerd, that you
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
graduated early at 17. However, there was also not the part until just a little bit ago where this stuff happened to you as well. So even through a lot of this, that still happened. At 18, you wanted to do dispatch. You had that exposure from the beginning. You had all of this connection. But also during that, it was a phone call that basically saved you.
Yeah,
And
that
that
was
has
it.
been this passion of yours since then. I mean, that fully ties everything full circle,
Yep.
ties it all up to this has been a motivation, a passion. This is why you do what it is that you do. The, part of this class that you put out there, as well. I mean, I've got goosebumps as I'm talking about this. Like this is amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, honestly, sometimes it can be overwhelming, like our
Mhm.
personal lives, and then just work. Sometimes we think like, well, how can I make change? And it's the little things, and that's why with a class like the class that I taught, say this, not that, it was just small changes, small
Mhm.
phrases, and those small things make a bigger impact than you realize. And like with their foundation, I'm going to teach a bigger class that just goes into overcoming adversity, and how to stay. So and it's that same concept. It's not big things, it's little things. So I do something for me every day, like get a soda. So just it's nice to do something, and those little things in our life or little things on the phone, all that stuff, it's going to make a bigger impact.
That's awesome. The little things. You fully have it. Thank you so much for being on this episode and for sharing your story, for just being so open about everything and just everything that you do. Thank you so very much. It's been an honor to have you on this episode.
Thank you.
I will be right back here with you. For those who are watching, who are listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, please send us an email to wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter, that is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook, that is facebook.com/within the trenches podcast. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital, excuse me, as well as Rapid Deploy. And this show will always be free, but if you're looking for any bonus content, some of the stuff that I was talking about in the beginning, you can check us out, and that's going to be patreon.com/WTT podcast again. And as always, thank you all to the patrons and all of you who watch, listen, support, and share. I appreciate it more than you know. This episode can be seen on Facebook as well as YouTube and LinkedIn. And for the audio portion of this, you can hear it 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and within the trenches.net. Have a good one, everyone.